Daughter, I once thought that I had angels in my room. They were sleeping on my fan while I was dreaming of you. And daughter, I once had such desire to believe that our lives had been planned out by an unseen deity. But you don't have to waste your time holding on to beautiful lies. Daughter, I once knew that everything that I believed, it was good and fair and true and consistent with my needs. But daughter, I am wrong almost as often as I'm right. So daughter, just be strong enough to make up your own mind, 'cause you don't have to waste your time holding on to beautiful lies. No, you don't have to waste your time holding on to beautiful lies.
Hello, everybody. This is Cass Midgley, the host of Everyone's Agnostic podcast. We interview people on their spiritual journey in hopes of encouraging one another to think for ourselves, to gather the courage to engage in this lonely, sometimes horrifying deconstruction and reconstruction of the bedrock of our lives. We tell ourselves stories, that's human, but what we're trying to do is not lie to ourselves. And we probably never do that intentionally, which makes it all the more elusive to try to expose or pinpoint when we're doing so. This is episode 7. Today we're interviewing Blake Tumbleson. He's vegan. He's a lighthearted, simple, and I don't mean simple in that he's stupid. I mean that he likes to look at life simply. He's really come a long way. He's evolved, and he's put together a reinvention of himself that is something to behold. I enjoy his company. As Lionel Richie said, he's easy like Sunday morning. Before we get to the podcast, Bob pointed out to me this week something. I actually heard it from one person myself, and he wanted me to address it, so I am. And it is the fact that some people think I have a potty mouth. You need to know there's a method to my madness. I refuse to acknowledge stupid rules, for one thing, but it goes deeper than that. I look at things on a large scale. I also zoom into root causes. And this issue is one of many that has a nasty legacy, and it only abides among good people because these roots have never been examined. It seems inane to even have to say this, but the creation of a list of dirty words is and can only be man-made. Of course, all language is man-made, and although I deny the existence of an anthropomorphical God, the thought that such a God would have a distaste for certain combinations of vowels and consonants is not only weird, but paints him in a very petty and contemptible light. This is just nonsense and should go without saying. So the real core of this issue, though, and all manner of human differentiation, is the need for frightened, insecure people to create us and them. It's rooted in self-disgust and the need to elevate oneself over and against others who we deem lesser through these stories. It's not unlike the creation of table etiquette, a dessert fork and a salad fork, and knowing the difference makes you culturally elite. It gives the adherents a sense of superiority and hierarchy in this caste system of table etiquettes. These are all detrimental to what we as a species need most, which is true community, a sense of connectedness. Connectedness is not just good because it produces a better life for more people. It's the truth. It's all that's real. And all these other little stories we tell ourselves are not real. So I see it as a matter of virtue and honesty and integrity to just open our eyes and say yes to reality. We're all just humans, and the sooner we acknowledge this, the better. All these things like this that help us forget that we're all just humans or create this self-delusion that we're superior to others based on false merits is taking us backwards. I make the connection between it and war. Yeah, I do. So like a petty list of cuss words and why humans are going to war in the 21st century perpetually, there's a connection, and I'm here to point it out to you. There's a freedom here that we should deeply value and protect. For example, political correctness and tiptoeing around fragile feelings. It will only postpone maturation and foster perpetual immaturity. Prohibition, whether of words or alcohol or guns, only feeds the frenzy to acquire such. What we can't seem to see is that we've looked ourselves in the mirror and we've said no. We've looked ourselves in the mirror and rejected what we see. We've rejected the human condition. We're disgusted with our own reflection and thus every other person we come into contact with. They're all candidates for our own self-disdain. Our shame of what it means to be human locks us in this cycle of hating ourselves, thus hating everyone else, thus behaving in ways that confirm our self-hatred, and the cycle never ends. Why else do you think our highly educated officials can't get along in Washington? Why else do you think that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is hopeless? And religion is the main source of hatred in the world. It is spawned out of our self-hatred, and it feeds it. Table etiquettes, lists of dirty words, all prejudices are micro versions of religious alienations and stem from the same seed, which is fear. Life is hard enough without us compounding our problems with these petty identifiers. The only reason we keep perpetuating this evil is we've not made the connection. We haven't thought it through. None of these identifiers or differentiators are true. They don't exist. They're stories we tell ourselves. And if we knew the damage and destruction our little stories were perpetuating, we'd repent. If stupidity and lies are the path we take on our way to God, we would do well to know that our God, our little man-made God, and all the laws and piety that surround it are not only figments of our imagination, but the source of great evils under the sun. We have created a morality that is evil, and we don't know it. In fact, we pat ourselves on the back for conforming to this false morality. In doing so, we inadvertently label what is good evil and what is evil good. This is the state of the world today. Our ability to scrutinize or criticize the fruit of our ideologies is hamstrung by our allegiance to our man-made mythologies and superstitions that we've canonized with the wave of a wand as Holy Writ. This has remained popular for millennia because it appeals to our most base nature, our laziness of having to think for ourselves, our cowardice for having to be responsible for our actions, and our deep-seated insecurities and fears. We haven't thought it through. We haven't thought through why we have a list of dirty words. I deny the existence of such a list. And in doing so, I feed the freedoms that we need. I say yes to what it means to be human. I say no to these identifiers and differentiators that create us and them caste systems. They're childish, they're silly, they're man-made, they're fictional, and all the while, people who adhere to such petty shit can pat themselves on the back thinking they've taken the moral high ground. I mean, how much deeper and darker can the deception be? That you've perpetuated an evil on the earth, and you feel superior, you feel moral, you feel good about yourself for doing it. I will say fuck the list, because I deeply want to abolish that list and all other sources of man-made differentiators that create us and thems. All right, let's get on with Blake Tumbleson.
Is the Pooch your interview mate here?
Yeah, I don't know how many interviews he's been in on.
What's his name?
Polo. Well, let's talk about how you and I met at Unity.
You were the guy that kind of sat in the back, which at Unity of Murfreesboro was like sitting in the front because it was like 6 rows. But you were sitting in the back, and then at the end you'd always have a thought or an idea, which was always I'd always go, "Wow, that guy's pretty sharp." And then he'd sit in the middle. I
was trying to impress.
Middle row, and then after a few weeks, he was in the front seat right up there with Felicia.
Felicia changed my life.
Felicia changed a lot of people's lives.
Yeah.
She was and is amazing.
Yeah, and Bob, I guess, met you through me. And
yes.
Yeah.
We have a little book club here in the borough.
Yeah, a book club where we don't read any books and get together and drink.
It's an excuse to socialize.
Yeah,
That's right.
Except this month. We're reading
I think we are
this
reading.
month.
We're reading
Yeah.
Sam Harris this month, yeah.
Yeah, which I haven't started yet,
Yeah.
but I will.
Okay.
I promise. I'll have it read in 2 weeks.
What kind of punishment can we come up with for people that don't read?
Well, I think you start the meeting by saying, stand up if you've not read the book.
There you go.
Yeah.
Shaming always
Shame
works.
always
Yeah.
works, yeah. It's worked for Christians.
Yeah.
It can work for us.
Yeah. Well, let's. Speaking of that, we start with the spiritual, religious background and your childhood experience with religiosity.
Yeah. Best I can recall when I was younger was we went to, I think, a Methodist church. And to me, I didn't know Methodist from Baptist from Catholic.
Sure.
It was just a church. It was a building where people went, and I had to sit in a hard seat and be bored until I got to
Sure.
leave. Yeah. So that was my earliest memory of church. And then we went to Christian Science Church, which was Mary Baker Eddy.
Right.
Which is really, there is no preacher, there is no minister, there's no, I guess you could say there's a service, but basically what they do is they have a reading. That's the whole thing from beginning to end.
There's no leader per se, just
There's a leader who's the reader.
Yeah.
And that's it.
And it changes every week or so.
Yeah.
Wow.
I found that.
So the fact that your parents went from a Methodist to that, and then it sounds like they went on to others. So would you call them seekers or what?
No, I don't know. I don't think so. I think my dad went wherever he had to go, where my mom made him go.
Oh, okay.
My mom eventually ended up fundamentalist Christian, which is what she is today. But we ended up, the church that I really liked, which really set me on my path, which was the Church of Religious Science, which is Ernest Holmes.
Okay.
It's metaphysical. It would be a sister church to Unity. I would venture to say the same beliefs. I don't know that there's any significant difference in the beliefs of the two churches, but it was metaphysical. So Ernest Holmes wrote a book called Science of Mind, and that was the church is known as the Church of Religious Science, which how much we love the word religious
And science stuck together.
Yeah, and science. I know. Certainly doesn't get hung up on terminology at all.
So was it more deistic, like an impersonal, like it's not a personal friend of mine, it's just a source and energy of power?
It's an energy. It's that
can't be known or can be known.
I don't know what known means.
Yeah, right.
I don't know what known means. It's an energy. It basically says this table is God. It says that you are God. This microphone is God.
Everything.
It is an energy.
Everything's an emanation of God, which is Neoplatonist.
Yeah.
Man, you guys use these big words.
Well,
are you sure you want to interview me here today? Because those are really big words.
That was not a big word.
Yeah. A lot of people don't know that many of the things that the Christian religion uses is Neoplatonist. It comes from Plato, or a new understanding of Plato from a guy by the name of Pliny, long time ago.
Pliny.
Yeah. The notion that there's a soul and a body. That's a Greek idea. That's not a Christian idea.
Well, the church is really the people there were fantastic. Kind of like Unity people. They're basically happy because they understand that you decide what you are. You decide how you're going to be. You decide your own attitude. You decide. Basically, you create your own life.
Yeah.
And
well, one thing that is a giant presupposition of these camps is that there's no danger in being wrong. That is a big jump for theists to make, because most of what drives, at least the Christianity and Islam, is that God is angry or that God is disappointed, that we have fallen from grace and from perfection, and that there's need for atonement. There's an estrangement that has been established by sin, et cetera, and there's a lot of things that have to be done in order to realign, to right that relationship back with God. Mm-hmm. There's some hoops you got to jump through. There's some T's you got to cross and I's you got to dot in order to consider yourself back, restored back into right alignment with God. I would say almost everybody, since we started, that we've interviewed, has a faith or has a practice that is absent of that judgment, absent of that estrangement, that there's no pressure to be right or to get reconciled or atoned with God.
And I think the reason is because what I was taught in a fundamentalist type environment in church was the mere thought of straying from Jesus, the mere thought of straying was in itself sin.
Sure.
If you think about having sex with a woman, you have sin.
Yeah, Matthew 5. Yeah.
Which, as a kid, my thinking was, well, then I might as well do it,
Yeah.
Yeah, you're wasting a good sin here.
Right.
So you want to jump in there.
Masturbating is a sin, but I like to masturbate.
Yeah.
But I think that's why was you weren't even allowed to stray in thought from anything that you were taught, because if you did, you were in fact committing sin, and let's keep you within the box. Let's keep you within the parameters that we've set.
And this is the stuff they were telling you as a little kid. This is when you were...
Yeah. Okay. It was although, obviously it didn't, and some of that didn't take. When I was younger,
I didn't stick, huh?
I remember actually coming out of, it was after church, when we went to the metaphysical church, we went into Walgreens one day. Well, prior to that, one of my older sisters had shown me some things that she'd stolen from a department store. And we're kids, we're exploring, and we all turned out just fine. But she showed me this, and I thought, well, that's pretty cool. So after church that day, we go into Walgreens. Well, I go around the store collecting things in my pocket. So I steal all these things, but being the good person that I am, I gave these things as gifts to my parents. And they're thinking, well, he's 8 or 9.
Yeah.
Pretty sure he doesn't have a job.
Yeah.
Where did he get the money? Yeah. So my mom takes it upon herself to question the benevolent juvenile delinquent.
Because you'd given it to her as a gift.
I give her things. And I remember she and I sitting in the kitchen one day, nobody else around. Mm-hmm. Her saying, so she started off really, so where'd you get these things? Well, at the store. Well, what store? Oh, at the Walgreens. When? Oh, it was after church. Well, where did you get the money for that? Oh, I just had it. You just had it, huh? So where did you get it, though? Mm-hmm. So she finally narrowed in, down the funnel we go.
Cross-examination.
Until she finally says, Blake, you stole them, didn't you? And I said, no. And she said, you swear to me that you didn't steal them. And I said, Mom, I didn't steal them. She said, go get the Bible. Now, my mom had one of these Bibles that my poor dad must have paid $1,500 for. It was the size of a small car. It was extremely
family
thick.
Bible.
Yeah. It had, it was the I'm More Christian Than You Bible. Sure, I remember it was white and it was gold leaf, and the pages had gold leaf, and I had to go get this Bible. Boom! Set it in front of me, and she got in my face. You put your hand on that Bible. You put your hand on the Bible, and you look me in the eye, and you swear not to me, to God. You swear to God that you didn't steal those things. So I completely lost it, broke down, cried, I stole them, which was really a good thing. She ended up taking me back to each store.
No way.
Meeting the manager, handing the items back. We'd walk out. I remember, the one I remember is the J.C. Penney store. She's a great mom. She's still a great mom. She's awesome. But took me back to the J.C. Penney store. But on the drive over there, it was a hot day. There were some guys laying tar on the road. And she said, Blake, when you steal things, you get a criminal record, and that's the only job you can get.
Oh, wow.
And these guys were just soaked in this black tar, and they were sweating. It was miserable. I thought, my God, I don't want to do that. No. Funny time. It led to a great story.
So high school, college, where are we when you start? Where do you start your? Well, of course, I would even say religious science is a a departation from Christianity.
It is, and when you tell someone, well, where do you go? Well, we go to...
Which is a question everybody asks in America.
In the South.
Especially
anyway.
here in the South.
Yeah.
Especially.
Yeah.
I grew up in Illinois.
Yeah.
It was the Midwest.
So Mindy today was at a cross-country thing for John, and she was a parent volunteer, and they put these parent volunteers at different stations of the race to make sure that the kids stay in the lines, or that people stay off the track, because here comes the kids. Because cross-country, they just come straight out of the woods, and you don't even know they're coming,
Right.
And she got stationed with a pastor, and she's got to be with this person for 2 hours.
Oh, my.
And she's just like, oh, my gosh. And so they talked about, he was a runner and she was a runner, so they found things to talk about for 2 hours. And it wasn't until their whole shift was over and they were walking back when he said, so where do you go to church? And she survived the 2 hours. And then the walk back to headquarters was, was the, where do you go to church? And I think she said, well, our favorite, church, we're not currently going, but we really love Unity. Or something like that. And I think she saw some way of changing the subject and did, and got it out.
How do you, I'm just curious, I know it's your interview, but how do you answer that question when someone says, where do you go to church?
Or they say, what are you?
What are you?
Yeah.
Well, I honestly today, because I really have an agenda of improving the image of atheism in the world, I say I'm an atheist, and I say it quickly and I say it proudly. Yeah, as opposed to dancing around it that I have for over for years.
Right.
And I was inspired by that girl on television where Wolf Blitzer. She was in Oklahoma.
Oh yeah,
and the tornado had taken out her house, and he said, "Do you thank the Lord?" And she said, "Yeah." And she just kind of laughed, and he pressed the question unbelievably.
Right.
He said, "You do thank the Lord, don't you?" I mean, follow up. He followed up with that question, and she said, "Well, actually, I'm an atheist," and started laughing. And she says, "But I don't." She even added as an addendum, which I probably wouldn't have.
Right.
I don't criticize people who do thank the Lord, but I'm an atheist.
But I don't do that.
But see, that was her coming out moment. Like, her family didn't know. I've seen interviews with her since, and her family didn't know. And there is a closet, that atheists kind of have to stay in, and I'm trying to buck it. I'm trying to get out of it. I'm trying to help get people.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, just to go back to your, when you were a kid and you stole the stuff and stuff. In the Catholic religion, they do a big deal. And maybe they do this for Protestants as well. I don't know. But there's the first Holy Communion, right? Okay. And that's a big deal in the Catholic Church.
So basically, up until that point, you're not allowed to take communion.
You're not allowed. Okay. Because you have to make a confession, a sincere act of contrition and what have you.
Well, don't you also have to go through catechism?
Yeah, you have to go through catechism class and all that. So we did that, and it's because it was a church school kind of thing.
Presbyterians have to go through a class before they can.
And I knew that I had to go in and talk to the priest. Blessed be Father, for I've sinned. My last confession was, well, this is my first one. And then you have to tell him what you did bad. Well, I didn't have anything.
Because Bob's not bad.
This is so odd. That's just so weird.
I didn't have anything, So
I've never done it.
So the Saturday before, I went into some shop, maybe it was a drugstore, I don't know, and I put my finger into they have like little guns with fake bullets, those little plastic bullets, and I stole a plastic bullet so I would have something to say I stole,
Just to have something?
Well, yeah. I mean, I thought that was brilliant. Don't you think that's a good? We got to say something. What are you going to say?
How old were you?
I wasn't masturbating at the time, so I couldn't talk about that.
You realize
I didn't kill anybody.
But what you've just described is, at least for you and your childhood mindset, that this premise or this format of confession actually compulsed you to sin as opposed to deterred you, which was probably its original intent.
Well, and remember, it was the week before, so I did it the Saturday, and then the next Sunday was the first Holy Communion.
But you did it because you knew confession was coming up, and you wanted to have something to say.
But true. But when I did it, I felt real bad, and I had dreams where I looked like a little devil. and I was running around with the bullet, and I was a little devil. And then I threw the bullet into the sewer. Yeah.
In the dream?
In the dream, or actually?
I think actually I did, as I recall. It's been so long
like
ago.
A drainage ditch?
Like a drainage sewer. Yeah, like on your street there. So nobody will ever find
Before or after you confessed?
Before. All that happened before.
And you were having basically dreams?
I was like I was a little devil running around because I stole the
with
bullet.
Horns?
Tell horns
me, Bob,
and a tail.
How old did you say you were?
Oh gosh, how old? 7 or 8 years old, something like that. Wow. Just a kid, just a little boy in first grade, I think.
So
7, maybe.
Bob, are you one of us? Are you one of those that thinks this kind of the teaching of this shit to children is child abuse?
Well, I know that the idea that that you're trying to train your child in something is motivated by what you think is good.
Good intentions.
Good intentions,
sure.
Right. But I don't think you do that to a kid. You just don't.
Yeah.
You don't do that.
Yeah.
I mean, why would you do that?
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's my story. Sorry to
that was your stealing story.
That's my stealing story. But you didn't have to go confess.
I don't know. Is Walgreens going to now sponsor the
Everyone's
Agnostic podcast?
I don't think
by
that'll
the way,
ever
come
happen.
on in and steal at Walgreens now. But
steal this book.
Yeah.
I used to steal Christian CDs.
Really?
Yeah, I was a Christian, didn't have enough money.
That's a good Christian.
Yeah.
Did you like
good
Christian
music? What you should do, and then take them back to the used CD store, and then recycle them and give them back, and then it would be okay.
I don't think I did it a lot, but I think I remember doing it once.
You have stopped, right?
As a teenager. Yeah.
You don't do that anymore.
No, I definitely don't steal. I haven't stolen in decades. I'm 48. I mean.
Yeah. But I mean, that's funny. You stole a CD. Boy, you must be a good Christian.
Yeah.
That just strikes me a little off there.
I think there's a degree in which I was just counting on the grace of God to overlook it or something. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because they were Christian songs, so sure.
It's a twisted
It really is, isn't
world.
it? It is so weird, the stuff you got to think about.
And it's interesting because that kind of started my journey, that path, that confusion, that confusion of religion versus my own thinking.
Yeah.
And of course, going to I don't know what you would call it, a traditional Christian church or Methodist, whatever, something a little more traditional than, Church of Religious Science.
Yeah.
So I was seeing two different sides of things. But by the time I was 15, or 16, I was totally confused. And it was interesting, and it was bad. What really drove me was this thing about I should feel bad. I was born a bad person. I'm innately a bad person.
Right. Why don't I feel like it?
Yeah, why don't I feel that all these lists of things were bad, and that God had all these rules for me that no person could ever live up to? And then as I read the Bible, because back then I did, I thought, and I guess at the time I probably didn't think in these terms, but I thought, this guy's a bit of a child. I mean, he's God.
God, yeah.
I mean, he's angry.
Yeah, the Old Testament God.
The Old Testament God in particular. I mean, he's a bit of an asshole, quite frankly,
Right.
And I would never back then have said God is an asshole because I thought immediately I'd go straight to hell.
For saying asshole.
For saying God is an asshole. Yeah, and for saying asshole.
Yeah, that's blasphemy.
Yeah, God is that's even worse. But and then all these things that were natural to me. I mean, evolution makes, I'm a man. Evolution makes me sexually driven, and I thought that as a teenager. It's like, okay, well, this is how I feel. It's really strong, but everything that I feel like I want to do revolved around sex is a sin, including just thinking about it.
Right. So you as a child, or maybe as even a teen, post-pubescent, you resisted the urge to masturbate. You resisted the urge to lust.
Yeah, I mean, at times, and then other times I thought, what the hell am I supposed to do with this?
Right.
And
but then you give in and you do it, and then you feel the guilt, right?
Yeah, you feel the guilt right after the release. You feel,
yeah.
You feel the good, then you feel the guilt.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so when I was 16 and I started driving, I could drive myself. Every Sunday I'd go to a different church.
Really?
Yeah. And
Once you got your own wheels, you were a seeker.
I was a seeker. So I lived in this town, East Alton, Illinois, which close by is Wood River, Illinois, which is a little refinery town. Mm-hmm. And so every Sunday I'd go to a different church. Now, keep in mind, I didn't know Catholic from Assembly, from Pentecostal, Baptist, to me, it was all church.
But you were learning.
I learned very quickly.
Yeah, they're very different.
The first time I showed up at like Episcopal, actually Episcopal was the one I ended up going to for quite a while. I really liked it because people left me alone and I got time to myself, I got time to kneel. But boy, I'd walk into a Pentecostal church or an assembly for the first time, and it was very different than anything I'd ever experienced.
Right.
Wow.
And it was very vocal, and there was, of course, speaking in tongues, and there was this, I don't know what you call it, is interpreting, or you interpret?
Yeah, the interpretation of tongues.
Whoa, wait, now tell me about this.
Okay,
I don't know anything about the interpretation.
If I'm over here speaking in tongues going, ooh, la ba ba with this gibberish, well, I'm sorry, whatever sounds, to me it sounds like gibberish.
Right.
Kaz over here might be saying...
Well, I'd wait till you were done.
And
the thing is, Bob, is that there's two different tongues. There's a prayer language, which is private, and then there's public tongues, which is kind of more of a prophetic role in public service, because Paul condemned public tongues if it didn't have interpretation.
Okay.
So, at least to the New Testament, and most of the churches that follow this stuff, if you were going to speak in tongues loud enough for others to hear you, I've been in churches before where if something like that, so somebody does rattle off, there'll be a pause in the music, and somebody in the pews, like just anywhere in the building,
sitting or standing,
shouting loud enough for everybody to hear them.
In this gibberish,
we'll go off on a rant in the tongue.
Right.
And then when they stop, these churches, the Pentecostal churches, know to wait.
Okay.
Because God gave them a word in tongue, and now we have to wait for God to give someone else the interpretation. And there were churches that if no one gave an interpretation, that person would be reprimanded for speaking in public tongues without an interpretation.
So the person would say what he said is, or what he means is?
No, they wouldn't even preface it with that. They would just, there'd be this pause, and then somebody would say, and it almost always started out, "Oh, my people," because it was God talking to the church. Okay. "Oh, my people," or "My dear children, I love you, and I'm for you.
Yeah.
I have a plan for you. If you will seek my face, if you will humble yourself." It's just like an
interpreter. It'd be like someone interpreting another language.
It'd be interpreting
you hear
Spanish
the other language, and you don't understand what it means, and somebody tells you that's what it was like.
Yeah.
My gosh.
And it was very. And I didn't even know that was a thing. I'd never even heard about it until I'm 16. Yeah, I'm 16, and I stand up, and somebody right next to me stands up, and this is going on. And I'm like cowering, man. It's scaring me to death. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Exactly. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And then down the road, what really confused me about all these different churches, because I had all these experiences, why is it that only in charismatic churches do they speak in tongues? Mm-hmm. And why is it that only in Baptist churches do they stomp their foot and point at you and have this altar call every Sunday?
They point? They stop and point at you?
Well, a Baptist preacher might stomp his foot, and you're this, you're that, and you need to repent, and you need to. So the confusion for me was, if there is one God, if there is one source, one religion, one Jesus, and we're all worshiping the same guy, person, whatever, why are there all these different rules, and why do certain things only happen in one church? Perhaps it's not God. Perhaps there's a dogma in that church. Maybe there's rules in that church. So
either that or God's schizophrenic.
Or God's schizophrenic. And then I'd think every Sunday I would go to a different church, and I'd think about it, and I'd compare it to the one before.
Wow.
And then over a period of time, what dawned on me is there is one theme that is consistent among all these churches, which is, we have the way. Mm-hmm. We have the only way. And they would literally joke about it. Oh, those poor Catholics are all going to hell.
Right.
oh, those poor Methodists are all going to hell. And then you'd go to a Methodist church and they would say, all those poor Pentecostals are going to hell.
Every now and then you might get a denomination, probably like the Episcopals, that didn't necessarily compare themselves to others or think that they were the only way.
Yeah,
Sometimes you get liberal, denominations.
And by the way, I know I used the word gibberish earlier, and I don't mean to criticize any religion. In fact,
I do.
And that's good, and that's fine. But for me, if I want to influence change, then I think the worst way to do that is to criticize somebody and get in their face about their beliefs.
Right.
Probably. And so so if someone listened to this and they, well, he said gibberish or I'm Pentecostal or whatever, I don't mean to criticize or say it's wrong. I just think it's not for me.
I think we can trust that those people aren't listening to this podcast.
I think here's the thing, and I really hope that this talk is really about change, because that's kind of the theme of my life. But I hope that someone, eventually is inspired to be brave enough. I mean, you got to be pretty ballsy to be a Christian and listen to this without already having a preconceived notion of what you're going to hear and already judge it before you've even turned it on.
Absolutely. I've told some of my Christian friends about the podcast. There's a good chance they're going to hate the show.
Yeah.
But I'm telling them about them anyway. If they get 20 minutes in and that's all they can take or whatever, but maybe they go back to it. I don't know.
I don't know.
But you're right, and I think one of the reasons why we went with Everyone's Agnostic is that we are trying to meet in the middle. We are here to talk about people's journey away from stuff that was bedrock for their childhood, and in order to take a sledgehammer to that bedrock, it is courageous, it is scary.
Yeah.
And so hearing others' stories.
Yeah, I'm still working on the speaking in tongues.
Yeah, I bet you are.
I'm thinking about now what makes a person behave this way? What is going on in this, like neuroscience? What's going on in that guy's head to make him do that?
Well, I think we can say, and I'm just
psychology?
going to think out loud.
Okay, yeah.
But when you have a magic book that is Holy Writ, that God wrote this book, so this is, and in your mind, that's you're convinced of that.
Okay.
You don't even question that.
Okay.
That this book is written by God.
All right.
It's almost like how much, maybe when we get into psychology, how much we want the approval of our fathers or our mothers. We really need, maybe we grow up needing to hear, I'm proud of you. I mean, that's music to our ears. And so if God wrote this book and God said, Paul puts it in the context of maturity, that if you're a mature Christian, then you'll speak in tongues. So there's this race to be super Christian or good or superior, and so it's a way for you to be a dude. I think that doorbell is Jehovah's Witnesses.
Really?
Should we invite them in?
Yeah, actually, I think we should.
Did anybody hear the doorbell?
Serious? Oh man!
Kaz,
we're going to narrate here because he may not edit this part out. Kaz literally is taking his headset off. He's going to the front door of his home because he thinks it's a Jehovah's Witness. We're going to invite him in.
That'd be great.
And
It wasn't.
It wasn't
Earlier today.
Oh, they did. Okay, they came earlier, but not today.
As the postman. Do you know? Are you sure he's not a Jehovah's Witness? Just because he's a postman.
I did have one. Mindy and I spend a lot of time on the front porch.
Yeah.
And we have these wicker out there, and it's a great place to just
sit and relax.
Sit and relax. And sure enough, a guy walks up. He's by himself. And so I said, have a seat.
Oh, dear. What did you do to that man?
Well, the thing is that he is in, his brainwashing is so steely trapped. I mean, it's an iron cage. Right. And so he's definitely not listening, because I wasn't trying to completely deconstruct his world.
Yeah.
I have to answer the questions that he's asking. I said, well, I was a minister for 20 years, evangelical Christian. I have a master's in theology from Vanderbilt.
Yeah, you kind of know what you're talking about.
But there wasn't, it was hard as a rock.
Didn't influence him.
His mind is made up, and he's 21. And that's part of it. I said, how old are you? He said 21. I said, well, okay.
Yeah.
And, I don't feel like that he'll have any hope of breaking out for at least a decade.
Yeah, it's going to take a while, probably.
Because it's so...
It's to be an event.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Or a series of events that makes
Let's talk about those events, really.
Yeah, well, I got one.
Okay.
And I just thought of this. When my mom passed away, she died of cancer maybe 25 years ago. She's close to death, and so she wants extreme unction. She wants a sacrament from
extreme
the Catholic.
unction. He says it so fast.
I remember in his podcast, I had no idea what that was.
It's extreme
you
unction.
didn't know what that was.
It's one of the sacraments of the Catholic Church.
Right.
Okay,
so the last rites.
The last rites. So 2 priests come.
Is this a joke?
No, this isn't a joke.
Sorry.
I know.
Sorry, it's about your mom.
2 priests walk into a hospital room. Two priests, a Jew, and a Muslim.
And a rabbi walk in. No, so the two priests. And
you're telling a story about your mom on her deathbed. And here I'm so crude. I'm sorry.
You are insensitive.
I know. I'm really insensitive.
But
Bob and I were friends.
Yes, that's true. So we're standing there, and the priests come in. There was a man and a woman who identified as priests, which is kind of strange.
No.
But I know. Well,
she was a nun.
Well, maybe she was a nun. I don't know.
There's no way she was
my
a
mom
priest.
was dying. I didn't know what was going
Especially
on.
25 years ago, motherfucker.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, but he was a very young guy. I mean, he looked very young.
Yeah.
And I guess the nun was with him. My mom died. I said something like, "Is she in heaven?" I said to the priest, you know, and he looked at me and without stopping, yes, absolutely, yes. To be that convinced helped me a great deal, you know, when I was going through that.
Did he know her, or was he just a priest?
He's just a priest. But I mean, just to have that snapped shut in your head and that's it, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Don't think like it, you know.
Well, is
that? I don't have that.
No. You did at the time, as a child. You took it. You said, all right, I need that to lean on right now because I need for her to be in a good place.
Yeah,
as opposed to nothingness.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Or
so you just described an event that describes this steely trapped, you know, certainty that people do carry within religions.
Yeah. And sometimes, you know, I like that. I think to myself, wow,
it gives you
I can't
comfort.
do that. How do you do that?
Yeah.
You know, how do you have that?
I like when you say I don't have that gene.
I don't.
Yeah.
But you have that human desire. You're admitting that it would be nice. It'd be nice to be able to believe that.
I guess.
But you just can't bring yourself to do it.
There's just too much doubt.
Too much evidence.
Too much evidence. Too much
Contrary.
doubt.
I'm finding more comfort in what Kaz calls the question.
Yeah.
I'm actually finding a lot more comfort. And not really comfort in the question. I'm finding comfort in knowing it's okay to not know.
Well, we didn't answer the door this earlier when the Jehovah's Witnesses came by today because Mindy said I don't want to do this again, and she doesn't even enjoy it when I demolish them.
You like it though.
I kind of it's recreational for me, you know, in a way.
Yeah.
So she said, "Don't answer the door. We're having lunch or we're having breakfast with John." So. But they did leave a flyer in the door, and I'd go grab it. But the main thing was that it said, "Where do we get the answers to the big questions?" And it said, "Science?" ? Philosophy ? Or the Bible ?
Mm-hmm.
But implied in that question is that we must find the answers.
Right.
Whereas I wanted to say, well, why I don't want the answers.
See, I think this is I think this is actually really profound.
Right.
And the reason why is because I imagine there's a lot of people out there that were like me in the fact that being okay not having the answer wasn't one of your options.
Wow.
You know, if you're multiple choice, not knowing and just living the rest of your life saying I don't know, that's not an option. You have to know.
Your journey, because you were bouncing around from a different church every week, you were looking for answers. There was a point in your life where you said, maybe the answers aren't what I need to find. Maybe, you know, the mystery thing that you talked about.
I eventually got there. Well, there were a couple things. One was the revelation that my only brother was gay. So my brother William, who is my best friend today, and was the best man at my wedding. And
Great guy. I've met him.
Yeah, I mean, everybody. It's just like you could do a show. Everyone loves William. I mean, he's the most genuine, real guy you ever met. He's goofy. He's funny. He's about 57 years old, I think now.
Yeah.
But to find out he's gay now, when he revealed that to me, I think my answer was no shit.
You already knew.
Yeah, I already knew. But he's gay, which means he's going to hell. And I think I think to this day, my mom is. Well, I don't think. I know she's still very concerned that he's going to hell. I had to deal with that. And it's like, why would this deity,
God,
so benevolent that created me, would I ever condemn any of my children to hell because of who they are? Mm-hmm. And this idea, it's that people choose to be gay. What that tells me is you haven't spent any time around people who are gay or lesbian.
So
because they all say the same thing. If I could be straight, I would be.
Yeah.
This is not an easy life. They don't like.
Right, and usually,
it's not they don't like being gay. It's just they would prefer to be straight.
Yeah. Well, and it usually happens early in life too, like 5, 6, 7 years old. You kind of know what's wrong with me or what's going on with me.
This is not a fun society to be gay within.
No.
Yeah.
It's getting better.
To end a sentence with the preposition.
It's getting better, but yeah. But so that was. I wouldn't say it was an event, but it was that dissonance that I think Ben or someone talked about. It's like I had to have an answer, and that's why I started going to these churches. I had to have an answer to all this stuff. And then when I was 16, I get a call about 3 a.m, and it's the voice in the other end said, "Mr. Tumbleson," and of course I just woke up. I said yes. He said, "This is the L.A. County Coroner. I'm afraid I have some bad news. We have the body of Joni Tumbleson here. And this is my sister, my oldest sister. So she's dead."
What happened?
There's 2 stories to that. One is what they said happened, and there's a version that my family believes.
Okay.
What they said happened was she jumped through a 7-story window. What they believe happened, and I've never read the coroner report because it's not going to change anything, so I just don't want to read it. It's full of ugly stuff. But my mom has read it, my brother's read it, and what they truly believe happened, and my dad believe happened, is she was murdered. There's no evidence of, I can't, I've never pursued it. I don't know if there's evidence of that or not. She was in with a really bad group of people. She was one of these people that, she was beautiful, and I'm going to go to California, I'm going to be a model. But she was in the 60s and 70s, too, so she grew up in the 60s,
Oh, boy.
So she got into drugs and all that. She ended up in the wrong group of people. Well, she had just a couple of weeks prior to that told one of our family members, "I'm going to get out of this. I'm going to change my life. I'm sick of it." And they don't like that. And if something happens to me, the one thing you can know for sure is I would never hurt myself. I would never kill myself.
She said this?
She said.
This is what she said. A couple weeks later, she's dead. And then I had to go in and wake up my dad and tell him and listen to him sob.
Oh, my God.
And it was just brutal. And, according to Christianity, she's in hell. I don't believe she's in hell. And it was so unsettling to me. My brother's gay, he's going to hell. My sister's dead, she's going to hell. I really like this God. What a great guy,
Wow.
Yeah, no. So I guess the same seekerness in you that drove you to go from bouncing from church to church, one of the things you observed was everybody's got a different angle on this, and this is not like the blind men and the elephant. Where they all have a different spin. Yeah. These are very different. These are mutually exclusive perspectives. Somebody's got to be wrong.
Yeah.
And then you bumped into this, my brother's gay, and why would God hate who my brother is, create him that way and then hate him for being that way? Yeah. These are cognitive dissonances. And then your sister dies, and this whole thing that, she's now being tortured or, whatever, in a lake of fire right now.
Right.
And that was it sounds like strike 3 as far as I've got to get an answer. I've got to get an answer, which is that same thing that drove you for answers. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, the answer was there is no answer. Or what? Yeah. What do you...
Well, ultimately for me now is it's okay to not have an answer.
Yeah.
But, what I observed during all that is everyone was so passionate. I mean, complete 180 degrees from each other, but they both absolutely believed what they were saying, knew they were correct. There was 100% degree of certainty, and yet they couldn't both be right. So over time, and it takes, and honestly, if you're going to make a major change in your life, if you're going to question anything in your life, it takes a really high degree of emotional maturity. And for me, I was gaining emotional maturity because I was young.
Right.
So over time, I realized that maybe this whole idea of heaven and hell and religion, maybe there doesn't have to be so much passion. Maybe you don't have to be right. Maybe they're all wrong. Maybe there's some other way. But the idea that there's a creator that sends his creatures, his creations, into a burning hell for eternity is fucking bizarre to me.
Yeah.
It's just fucking bizarre.
And you know what they say, that he doesn't send them, they choose to.
Yeah, they choose to go. And they choose that lifestyle.
And that's horseshit. Why? I mean,
Right.
it's setting people up for failure. Because if you think about that, the preacher says you're naturally bad, you're naturally a sinner, you naturally do all this stuff. In other words, God set you up for failure just so so you can decide to be cast into the fire of hell.
Yeah.
Well, let me check with Cass on this, our master in theology. But isn't it? Didn't Saint Augustine, and Paul, didn't they come up with all that? I mean, that's all extra biblical stuff. That stuff about falling from grace. Am I right about that?
No, it's not. It's not extra biblical, Bob, to say that you fell from grace, you're a sinner, and you need a savior. Faith without works is dead. Is very biblical and very
You
Pauline.
love that, I know.
No, I hate that. Well, I do. I guess that there's a degree in which it's like, yeah, I want to see fruit. I want to see, and that's ultimately that became the catalyst or the judgment or the lens through which Christianity fails its own test. That your fruit, you're hateful people.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, it's like so the fruit of your doctrines is shit. What I'm hearing, Blake, in your journey is a lot of what we're able to say and what you're saying now sounds like we're saying it with the benefit of hindsight.
Yeah.
I'm curious as to, so you were having all these questions and doubts and concerns and cognitive dissonances with what you were seeing, but I know for myself, I had those questions and doubts, concerns, and just shelved them. Just kind of stuffed them because how could I be right and a million people be wrong? I have to conform. And I've been your friend long enough to where I know some of your story, and I'm not sure if you're the one that I'm thinking of, but as recent as 10 years ago, you were still kind of a conservative Christian or a thinker. So I feel I'm right to say that we're talking now like you're looking back on those things and saying you had those doubts, but you didn't actually act on them and give yourself permission to think freely until when?
Probably around 2005-ish.
Yeah,
I started really.
Yep.
And here's the thing, I was married. Ultimately, I was married 19 years. Now divorced and remarried 2.5.
So how old were you when you married the first time?
27, I think. It was 1990.
So how much was Christianity or a part of your marriage in the early years?
It wasn't my wife at the time was raised Catholic. And of course, you know how I was raised.
You're
kind of a mess.
You were Heinz 57.
Yeah,
exactly. You were a
I was
mongrel.
An amalgamation of religions and beliefs and things. But it really wasn't a big part early on, and it became an issue at the end of our marriage. It became a big issue because we had problems in our marriage over time. I did not want to get a divorce under any circumstances because I thought, you work it out. And eventually I figured out it takes two people to work it out, and we just weren't able to. So, but I ended up really miserable. And part of that misery was my own internal turmoil of this idea of spirituality and religion. My metaphysical past kept coming up.
Did your ex-wife accept your brother?
Absolutely loved my brother. Yeah, I don't think she judged him. Absolutely loved him.
Okay, so we're not talking super religious,
Yeah, no, we weren't. But we ended up.
Are you the one that in 2008 voted for McCain though?
Yeah, I think I did.
See, I did too.
Yeah, I think I did.
Really?
Yeah.
That's how recent. My point is, that's how recent we were considered.
Yeah, it was.
Wow.
And it change is really difficult. You know, the easiest thing in the world, here's the easy path, is buy into a religion or a doctrine or choose one or decide that it makes sense for you and stay within those walls. Yeah. And then everything's easy because it's safe. It's very safe. The really difficult thing to do, and this is kind of where I talked about emotional maturity, either it's hard, is to make a decision where I'm going to step outside this box, or I'm going to walk along this line at the edge of this box and see what's on the other side. Mm-hmm. And so I started doing that. Of course, I'd already done that in terms of the metaphysics side. Mm-hmm. But I got to the point where my life was just turmoil. Yeah. I ate poorly. I didn't sleep. I had constant fatigue. I had constant reflux.
Were you nervous? You're obviously growing apart.
Oh, very much so.
Mm-hmm. I picture things like parallel lines or like trajectories. Mm-hmm. And so, 19 years you were married, right, the first time?
Right.
So when you're young and you have these lines, they appear parallel. Mm-hmm. But 19 years down the road, you see this gap appear.
Yeah, you know what I say about that? And you know, when we have a major event like a divorce, there's a lot of reflection. What I say about that is, my wife and I at the time, we became more of who we already were. Hmm. She was her
exactly.
Her heritage is German and Irish. Mm-hmm. And so she's very disciplined, she's very regimented, she's very rule-oriented, she's very black and white. And I'm not judging or saying any of those things are wrong, I'm just saying that's who she is.
Yeah, mm-hmm. That's how she's wired.
She became more of that.
Yeah, you don't have to be German or Irish, though, to be that way. You know. At least as I understand it, you can...
But it helps.
Yeah. Well, if you have a family that is, very...
And there's a lot of good in that, a lot of beauty in that, a lot of good that has been transferred to my kids and that. So for me, I was more gray, you know. I didn't, I was more liberal in my thinking, although, God forbid, don't you call me a liberal back then, because I was anything but a liberal. And even now, I mean, anybody that knows me would probably say, yeah, you're a Democrat or you're a liberal, but I don't really want terms.
Like labels.
I don't like labels. I mean, I just... What's the point? I mean, what's the point in labels?
And I'm wondering how things changed when you met Sharon, your current wife. Mm-hmm. And last you two wife. Guys, your last wife, right? You two guys are like lovebirds. I mean, it's so sweet to see you together all the time, the way you behave, with each other. It's good.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
I think they're the king and queen of PDA. That's what. That's what you're saying.
And that's we are, and we know we are, and believe me,
we knew that it would level off, and it has. But in that first year, you guys were almost embarrassing.
I know, and we, and it wasn't a show. Even to this day, at home, it's the same way.
So, of your 19 years with your first wife, how much of those last years? How many of those last years were miserable, such that when you jump into something that is like, this is real love, I really do love this person. Yeah. And I think that's part of why you guys, in a sense, freaked out. Well,
Sharon and I mean, we really, it's like being in a river with a really, really strong current. You can try to swim against it, but you're just wasting your energy. Mm-hmm. When I fell in love with Sharon, I wasn't. That's the last thing I wanted to do was fall in love. I mean, I didn't want a relationship.
You had divorced your wife. You were single.
Yes, and after being married 19 years, my plan was,
stay single.
I sell airplanes for a living. I sell all over the world. So I've had opportunities to travel and go different places.
You got your freedom.
I'm free, man. I can do anything I want to do. So I'm going to travel. I'm going to start taking people up on these invitations that I get to go to Australia and South America and different places. Yeah. This is going to be great. I don't have any interest in getting into a relationship. I wanted to date, but with Sharon and me, it was different. She was married 20 years. I was married 19 years. And so literally 2 weeks after we'd kissed, we were having this conversation about how we felt about each other. And we'd been friends for a period of time prior to that. And it was insanely intense.
Well, one thing that is unique about your journey is your ex-wife is still bitter about the divorce and about things, whereas your current wife's ex, who took it hard at first, is now
Yeah, it's
having dinner with you.
Yeah,
and Sharon.
It's amazing, Kaz.
So I guess we want to contrast the tale of two cities here. That you have one person that is highly evolved, or at least has gone through this transition and come out really healthy, able to be with you guys. And here's the thing I think is also unique about your marriage with Sharon. She told you up front. She said to you, Eric is my best friend and always will be. Yep. And you either get comfortable with that or we don't have a future.
Yeah, in so many words. Yeah, that's she wasn't quite that direct, but she was very. I mean, she said, "I know him, and I know that eventually he's going to work through all of this.
And I want him in my life. I want him in my boy's life."
Yes, absolutely.
And she gave you.
She
let you know up front.
If there was ever, an ultimatum coming from Sharon to me,
it was conditional.
It was, and of course I've shared that with you because I look back on it and I love it. Mm-hmm. I mean, I love the passion.
I do too.
I mean, I love the passion that she.
I love the honesty.
Well, and you think, in some relationships, I don't like ultimatums. I mean, but I didn't have any problem with that at all because I knew Eric. I didn't know him well, but I knew Eric, and he's a great guy.
And she was right. He did bounce back. He did. He
did. And
now he hangs out with you guys.
He hangs out with us. And here's the contrast. To this day, my ex-wife is very, very bitter and angry. Won't answer the phone if I call.
Oh,
if I get an email, she doesn't address it to Blake unless she thinks she might be able to use it in court later on, which she's dragged me back to court 2 or 3 times for various things.
Oh dear.
And then you have Eric, who went through a much more traumatic, difficult divorce than I did. Mm-hmm. Who they split their assets and did what people do. Didn't want anything to do with me. He didn't want to get a divorce, and he certainly didn't want someone else coming into Sharon's life because he didn't want to ever be divorced from her.
Yeah.
And yet, he has managed to work through it. Mm-hmm. And I think he's done that. He hasn't done it for me. He's done that because he loves Sharon. I mean, they're best friends, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
And he loves his boys. And you ought to see, I mean, initially, when I moved in the house, he wouldn't come around and would do with me. Now he comes over anytime he wants. He comes over unannounced. When he's in town, he's a pilot, so he's gone a week at a time and back. And
I think that says something about both of you. I think it says something about you. I'm proud of him for recovering and all of that, but it says something about you. And I'm not trying to blow smoke up your ass.
No, and I appreciate it. And, I'm not friendly with Eric because Sharon gave me an ultimatum and I had to be because that's the first thought. I'm friendly with him because he's truly an evolved guy. He's a really nice guy. He and I sat and drank wine one night until I said, "Hey, Eric." I said, "Look outside. The sun was coming up." We sat there all night and talked. And
that's great.
That was the first time we'd stayed up all night talking. And we drinking the wine and talking about. And I apologized for the difficult things that he had to go through. Yeah. And I said, "I know I'm living in your house." And he literally built part of that house. It was a spec house, but he turned the garage into a playroom. He built on this big addition with 2 garages and a loft, mother-in-law apartment. And, even 2 weeks ago, he left after being over for dinner, and it was, 11:30, 12 o'clock at night. And I just sat there, and I thought, I just want to reach out to him. I sent him a text and said, "Eric, it was really good to see you tonight. And, it's never lost to me that you're having to leave your house. It's never lost to me the pain that you must feel. And I know I'm sorry doesn't help, but it's all I've got to offer." Yeah. And I said, "No need to respond." Well, he responded back, and he calls it surreal. He said, "It's just, being there is surreal." But I don't know many men, because of their egos, that could do that.
Right.
And if you're a man with a big ego, you'll look at him and you'll look down on him. You'll think, "Oh, what?" But if you're evolved, you look at him. If you have control of your ego, you look at him and go, "How does he do that?"
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know how he does it.
Yeah.
And I don't, honestly, as evolved as I'm trying to be, I don't know that I could do the same. And again, he's not doing it for me. He's doing it for
his kids.
He's doing it for himself. He's doing it for Sharon. He's doing it for his kids, primarily for his kids.
Yeah, I would think. Absolutely.
So, Blake, we are on the off-ramp here. We're going to head out. And
right.
I want to give you a chance to talk about manevolving.com.
Well, first of all, it's a website, manevolving.com, that I've created. And what you'll find on there is part of my journey, and I'm very transparent on there. I've had it for, 2-3 years now. Because of this transition, because of this change that I've gone through, and I remember how difficult it was, I thought, there's got to be other people out there, and not just men, but there's got to be other people out there who are fighting this, who want to make change, who are afraid or don't know how to go about it. And I thought, let me just put this out there, and if there's someone in the same situation, they can find hope, they can find methodology, they can find courage.
Right.
So I created manevolving.com, and you'll see blogs, and you'll see videos, and you'll see some of my thoughts on things. If someone is interested in sending me an email or joining in the conversation or adding a question on the forum and sending it out to their friends, that's
sure. Well, we'll also put
we can put a link to it.
We'll put a link on our podcast here.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Steve Jobs once said, "Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. Don't be trapped by dogma, which is living with the results of other people's thinking.
Right.
Don't let the noise of others' opinions drown out your inner voice. And most important, have the courage to follow your heart and intuition," which I think, when I hear your story, and that you were determined to stay married, fought it, banged your head against that wall until you finally said, "I've got to be me." You mustered the courage to take steps into the abyss.
More than anything else, I wanted peace.
Yeah.
I just had to have peace.
And you were not.
And I was not feeling peace anywhere. I mean, if I was awake, I wasn't feeling peace. And if I was asleep, I'd wake up drenched in sweat.
How many years of that do you think, though? I think this is the question I keep coming back to.
Probably 5 or 6, and every year it got worse.
Well, that's
and there were times I thought I was going to die in my sleep, because I'd wake up and my heart would be pounding, and I would be drenched in sweat, and I would be miserable.
I think that's what people need to hear, is that we're not just talking about some whimsical idea for you to put a fork in your marriage.
No, I went through bankruptcy. I had a business that failed. I mean, there's a lot more to the story that we don't have time for in the podcast. But basically, what I did was I said, I'm going to make a change. I made my final decision. I have to do this.
Right.
Knowing that I might lose my friends, not really knowing how my wife was going to respond, and most importantly, not knowing what was going to happen with my kids. I mean, I was scared to death. I mean, my parents divorced. I had siblings that have divorced. I'm sick of seeing divorce. But what I've come to realize over a period of time is sometimes it's okay. And sometimes it's the right thing. And honestly, my wife would have stayed married to me and be miserable for the rest of her life. And I don't understand that. And I know people have done that for decades.
I think my parents did that.
I think a lot of parents have done that.
Absolutely. When you say peace, do you mean, what do you mean? Is it the absence of something, or is it something else?
It's a resolution. It's a resolution of, first of all, since this is a talk about spirituality and religion or non-religion, all that, what do I believe? I was still struggling with this idea of, I didn't believe in hell anymore, heaven and hell. But okay, if there's no heaven and hell, what is there? And I still don't have the answer. I suspect I'll die without an answer. Ultimately, we just choose to believe what we believe. But I wanted a resolution with that. I didn't have to get divorced to find it. But in fact, I might have, because there was a lot of turmoil around that as well. There was turmoil around everything. And a lot of arguing and all that. It was not happy. I mean, there was nothing happy. And when I started to see my discontent be directed toward my kids from me, that was something that I thought, I got to think about this.
Yeah.
When your inner turmoil starts coming out on the people you love most, and you're seeing yourself inflict that kind of pain, if you will, or then you realize something hit you and said, this is not.
Yeah.
This is not sustainable. This is not functional.
Something has to change.
It's just
and it's not that I got divorced because my wife was wrong about anything. It's just I don't want to put blame on her. I mean, we just didn't need to be married anymore. So I had to, and it cost me most of the people that I called my friends at the time. Everything changed, and I moved into an apartment and I was alone. And all of a sudden I was by myself. I didn't have my kids. I didn't have a wife. I didn't have these friends because...
How weird.
I think you and Sharon both lost friends over this deal.
Yeah, and I think Sharon got her friends back because, we were just consistent.
You told me about some neighbors that think.
Yeah, there's still some neighbors in the neighborhood that still don't like me.
They don't wave.
Yeah, they don't wave because that was Eric's house.
You're the what?
Interloper.
Yeah, I'm the interloper and
homewrecker.
Sharon and I have this phrase about those people, whoever those people are, is we're going to wear them down with love and patience, and that's what we've done. And we've our mantra has been wear them down with love and patience, be consistent, and just be who we are. Because over time, people realize, wow, everything I thought is wrong. Look at them; they're still happy. He's not this interloper. He's not this bad person. He's not things that I've heard. People talk and they say things, and we just have never concerned ourselves with what other people think. Wayne Dyer, I think, is where I heard it. What you think of me is none of my business. I love that.
Yeah,
I love that. And if that's the case, then I'm not concerned about other people's negative thoughts or ideas or opinions of me. And guess what? I'm fucking free. I'm fucking free.
It's funny.
And if there's anybody struggling with that, it's like, I want you to be free. You might have to go through a little bit of hell, because that's where hell is right here. You might have to, but it's so worth it to be. And I'm not just talking about divorce. I'm talking about any change. I wouldn't encourage anyone to get a divorce. That's a personal decision, but it's change.
Can you think of a time when you laughed the hardest?
A time, probably pretty much any Jim Carrey movie. I think he's a brilliant comedic actor.
Did you happen to see his commencement address?
I did, and I commented on it on Facebook. I thought it was just fantastic.
Wow.
This guy's deep.
Oh my gosh.
He's very, very deep, and he understands. He's got it. It was the Maharishi University or something like that, and he did this painting. And if you haven't seen it, you got to find it on Facebook.
Did he do the painting?
He did this enormous painting, and I love it because when the curtain drops and the painting is revealed,
they reveal this painting. Now, this painting, Bob, is 30 feet high.
My God.
Oh, it's
by 20 feet, and it's cloaked. And during his commencement address, he says something, and then they drop the cover, and the place had already gone. The place had already applauded like almost every other sentence.
Yeah.
Wow, I'm gonna have to check this out.
It's really good, and
he really has a philosophy on life, and it's very healthy.
Oh my gosh, it's very progressive.
It's very progressive, and it's funny. He revealed this painting, and I look at it, and I guess just because I'm a guy, the first thing I saw was a vagina. I'm serious. It's like this opening, and there's light coming out of the opening, and then there's all these things around it, and there's torture and there's happiness, and anyway, he explains all of it. He doesn't mention the
vagina.
The vagina.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna have to check that out. That sounds great. Yeah. Is it Eastern? Is his philosophy more Eastern, or is it?
I would say so. It was really just having a perspective. It wasn't about religion. It was just about having a perspective on life, and basically, you choose your own happiness, and you choose your direction.
Yeah. So. He uses the term universe in the way that lunatics do, in that you can ask the universe, kind of like The Secret. You know?
Yeah.
It's a little bit woo-woo and a little bit new age, new thought, but he just said... Well, what it was is his dad was funny and comedic, but he chose the safe path of becoming
an accountant,
or
something like that.
And
his dad.
Somewhere in his accountant career, when Jim was a little boy, he got fired from that accounting job. And
safe job.
The safe job, and he said, "Well, if you can fail at doing what you don't want to do, why not at least try to succeed at what you do want to do?" Was one of
that's
one
great.
Of the phrases.
Well, I think Jim Carrey is like Michael Jackson. A lot of those people that figured out what they want to do really early. I mean, he said even as a kid, he would his parents would have folks over, and he'd fall down the flight of steps, And then he would say, now in slow motion, and he would read it, or in reverse, and he would fall back up in slow motion. And I think he was very good at his craft at a very early age.
He's a really funny guy. And he's a very good dramatic actor, too.
Yeah.
Usually comedians are very good at dramatic because they understand the sadness.
Yeah.
You know, that's where they find a lot of humor.
Yeah. It was interesting. I'd heard a story, and I've never looked this up to verify it, that when he was broke and before he made it, he used to carry around a check in his wallet that he wrote for $10 million. And he said, one day I'm going to be paid $10 million to do a movie. And he carried it around in his wallet. I don't know if this is true. Some of them can verify it. And that's exactly what happened. He once got paid.
How about an embarrassing moment in your memory?
It's funny because when things used to happen to me and I would get embarrassed, I mean, I'd truly get embarrassed and I would hate that moment. There's not much that embarrasses me anymore. There's not much that gets me, you know, I guess, I don't know why that is. But
you know, you're just mature.
You're shameless.
Maybe it's because I'm shameless. It's got to be because I'm shameless. Yeah.
So to wrap up, I think the theme that we get, your life took on a major change at midlife, and you're 5 or 6 years into this shift, and I know how I think it's working for you. But talk about are you happy?
I'm very happy. Yeah.
What are the keys to your happiness right now on this?
Well, I mean, I think what holds most of us back, and I can't believe we haven't even mentioned this word yet, is fear.
Oh, yeah.
I had so much fear. You know, we paint pictures in our mind about the way things are going to be if we take certain actions. And I had so much fear wrapped around that. And I had to get past the fear. And I did.
That's very hard to do.
It is very hard to do. And there was a day and a moment, and there's a whole story around all that about how I got through it. But it involved a lot of self-reflection. And here's what really happened. I mean, just to cut through all the bullshit. So I sat down quietly one evening when everyone was in bed in the house, and I started asking myself questions.
What do you want?
And I forced myself to give truthful answers, and I wrote them down. And I still have that paper today. And as I wrote, and I got to the end, I put my pencil down and I stopped, and I said, "It's just fear. It's just fear. You've got to start focusing on what you want instead of focusing on what you don't want." And that changed everything.
Wow.
And for Sharon and I think one of the things that we found, it's really for us the key to getting what you want in life, the key to being happy, the key to finding peace is just experiencing what you already have, having gratitude.
Right.
So we every single day, it doesn't matter what's going on, or if we bring something up that's negative, it's not going our way, we don't like it, it frustrates us or pisses us off, one of us will step in and say, yeah, but, and then talk about something we have that's important to us, it's meaningful. So, I mean, for me, the focus of the conversation, the focus of my life has been change, and how do you get from this place in life that maybe you love the people around you, but you realize it's just untenable and it can't last. How do you go from there and risk everything to be your authentic self and live the life you want to live? And I did it.
And it's going to get worse before it gets better.
It's going for a while.
Yeah.
It's going to get worse. And Sharon talked about her whole process, same thing. It was hard, and then it got worse. But when it gets better, and you can't force these things, and time goes slowly during that period, but it is so worth it. If it's true that we only have one life, don't live it and be miserable. Live it, and be free. And do what you have to do to be free.
Right.
Great.
Awesome. That's a great note to end on. However, I do have to say this, and it just occurred to me while we were wrapping up here. Being in this town, we moved here 8.5 years ago, and we floundered for the first 5. And progressively, intentionally, we began to seek out relationships with people that we wanted to be with. And we did it in a way that was like, I can't really tell if they want to be with us, but goddamn it, we want to be with them, and so we're going to do it.
Yeah.
And so Mindy and I started this book club a 1.5 years ago. She is now able to say, before the book club, I had no roots in Murfreesboro, meaning I could up and leave and I wouldn't shed a tear. But because of the book club, and ultimately I would say because of the relationships. Obviously, that's what we're talking
Yeah.
about. Now she feels there's roots here, and we feel a part of something. We feel we're part of a community. And when you're outside of church, and when you've spent your life in church, and there are some powerful aspects of community building within
Yes.
Christendom.
Yes.
And when that's gone, so we kind of had to recreate it. And so I just want to say, you two are like two of my best friends in town. I absolutely love and adore you and the journey that we're on together.
Yeah. Thank you.
And that our wives are on together.
Absolutely.
And that we're this feels like home, you know, not because of the geography, but because of the relationships. And and honestly, it's weird. I hadn't even thought about it up until just now, but I'm looking at two of my best friends in town.
Oh.
And I feel the same way about you. And again,
I don't like
said,
you guys.
Not
to tell you
to
the truth. Both of you guys are full of shit. That's what I think.
well, we are full of shit, but that's what makes
But at
us
least
like
we
them.
know it.
No, I kid. I kid.
But you know,
there's a lot of love in the room.
I actually think you make a great point, because my friends in my previous life, however you want to term that, there really weren't friends, and it was very shallow. And the friends that I've made post difficult decision, you know, in my new life, you want to call it my new life, there's such a depth to the friendships. I mean, there's such a meaning. It's so real. Before, you'd have to watch what you say.
Yeah.
None of us...
And keeping up an image. I
You keep
Yeah,
up an image, and
forget that.
you know, I mean, that whole idea of comparing paychecks, or I call, you know, comparing dicks,
Yep.
whose is longer. It's just ridiculous.
Right.
But that was kind of the world.
Comparing trophy wives.
Yeah, and that's
gee.
kind of the world that I was in before, and it's so nice to be with people that are so real, and we can love each other and say we love each other. By the way, I love you,
And mean
Kaz.
it. And know that
Kaz,
they mean it.
I love you.
I love you
That's
too.
right.
Bob, I love
Yes.
you.
All right. No tongue, please.
There's no tongue.
Jeez.
But, you know-
I kid. I know. I'm very comfortable in my
I'm ready.
sexuality.
He's very
I just
comfortable
want you
with
to
tongue.
know.
Oh, you're comfortable with tongue, is what
But
you're saying. You know,
I'm just saying.
and we hug, and there's nothing odd about it. It's
Oh,
because
God, no.
it's
Yeah.
not about male or female.
I
It's
could
it's
dry
about
hump
love.
you, and
Yeah,
there wouldn't be
no,
any
and you
weird-
got to quit asking, because the answer's still no.
Okay. I don't
All
know.
right. Well, good talk, man.
Great talk.
See you out
Nice
there.
talk. Yeah.
Yep.
Thanks, guys.